So what I'm going to focus on today, what we have heard from those of you here in Singapore and in some of the other countries we're visiting in Asia, is that one of the issues that is really pressing for employers is how to retain your most valuable employees. You're certainly not alone in this, and what I'd like to do today is to share with you some research-based knowledge about what you can do in your firms to hold on to your most valuable talent so that your firms can perform and meet their full potential. So let's start by taking a little bit of a look inside your company at some of the people who are there. For instance, your young employees, some of them perhaps graduates of EDHEC and other great business schools who come to you with an incredible amount of enthusiasm. They're excited to be part of your firms. They're ready to work hard. They want to grow and learn, develop their careers. And also, they want some feedback. They want to know how they're doing. Okay, we've done not just our own surveys, but global surveys by some of the top professional services firms, by other academics, that pretty much around the world, what we know to be the #1 factor, both in recruitment and in retention, is do you have opportunities for regular growth and development? Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean are you on a succession plan that's going to move you up a career ladder, but everybody wants to be at a firm where they can be learning and growing. Okay, I've been tracking global changes in labor practices for the last 15 years. One of the major shifts has been the fact that the old-time long-term employment contract is withering and going away. Even in countries like Japan, where it still is probably the strongest, that there are very few employees today who are coming out of school and thinking, I'm going to join this firm, whether it's BNP Paribas, or whether it's another financial firm, a bank, a professional services firm, a startup, a high-tech firm, and thinking, I'm in the company now and they're going to oversee my career. I just have to perform and they're going to move me up a ladder. That has pretty much disappeared. So instead, what's becoming increasingly important is that at the level where employees are, no matter where they are in the company, that they have managers who will support them and help them to have constant opportunities for learning and growth. Okay, so we're seeing firms around the world kind of shifting the risk of employment away from themselves, not taking on the idea that we hire somebody, we're looking at 35 years with this person, but we hire somebody and we're going to have them as long as they'll perform. So, you know, a lot of managers who have been in firms since the time when they could expect a long-time career think, what is wrong with these Generation Y employees? What's happened to loyalty? Why is it that they're so willing to switch firms at a moment's notice? Well, really, it's firms that started that trend, okay, because it was about 20 years or so ago that firms started to use downsizing, right-sizing now as a regular strategic practice, not just to save yourself in the context of being about to go out of business. And anybody who's entering the labor market today has seen their parents' experience, the experience of older, colleagues that have gone into the labor market. So there's really very little, there's, a dissolution of loyalty to a long-term employment relationship on both sides of the employment contract, with the result that employees need to have a much more frequent sense that the employer is investing in them, and employers are looking for more frequent displays of employee performance and motivation. So that's how things have evolved, and your Generation Y employees are really very much hallmarks of that, but it's not just Gen Y, right? There are plenty of people in their 40s and in their 50s who are saying, what's meaningful to me today? And is this firm really, am I finding opportunities to express what it is that I'm most passionate about? Am I have opportunities to use my skills every day at work? Gallup, for example, has been collecting data from millions of employees now and are finding that one of the absolute keys to employee performance and retention is, do you have a chance to use your skills, your greatest strengths at work on a daily basis? Where the answer is no, employees are much more likely to check out mentally or to leave and go to another firm. So here are your employees, and let's take a look at some of the high-level managers in your firm who are very results focused, right? They have done their time, they've paid their dues, they've put in what's necessary to get to where they are, and they are looking for that same thing on behalf of their employees. So many of the senior managers that are overseeing areas of the business in your firms aren't really wired to be nurturing and appreciating employees as individuals, aren't really well oriented towards the idea of giving feedback, of helping employees feel connected and feel valued, and really developing each employee as an individual resource. And so there's really a disconnect for many employees between the way that they would ideally like to be managed, the way that they would thrive if managed that way, and the way many managers manage, right? What's the number one reason that people get promoted into management? They performed well at a non-managerial job. They have the skills that it takes to do that job. They may not have any managerial skills at all. Okay, so that's becoming more and more important, that managers need to have strong interpersonal competencies. Okay, why do employees stay? There are 5 reasons that are most prominent from research, and again, this is a fairly robust global set of factors. And the first one is that you have meaningful and challenging work. Okay, so everything that we do in terms of retention, oftentimes we focus on retention programs that have a little, a child care center, or do you have a concierge who can bring you dinner at your desk, or do you have, a variety of different programs, when the core of what you do in your position, it's the work that is truly most powerful and important. And what makes work meaningful and challenging? It's work that is linked to what you care about most. Okay, if you're in a position and year after year you're doing what you were hired to do, and you're never expanding, you're never given an opportunity to really pursue your curiosity and to pursue your expanding horizons as you gain increasing experience and exposure in your industry, the meaningfulness of work tends to erode. So this is a really key thing to be thinking of as part of your regular managerial practice. The most powerfully motivating condition that human beings can experience, and I say this is from Teresa Amabile's research at Harvard Business School. I'm going to put this in a big font, because if you only remember one thing tonight, okay, here's the one thing I want you to remember. Here's the most powerfully motivating condition people can experience, is the sense of making progress at work that is meaningful to you. So as a leader, if you on a daily and on a weekly basis can help your teams feel that they're making progress at meaningful work, you are ahead of 90% of the other managers out there. That's the key thing that you should focus on. That's your first priority. The second thing is having learning and growth in career development. And I mentioned that, their career ladders aren't as clear as they used to be. Some people who work on careers are talking about lattices, where you might move up, you might move sideways. Even some people are now talking about career climbing walls, where you're kind of jumping from one rock to another. Career development doesn't need to mean a robust, highly formalized succession plan that is overseen by HR. I know that we've got a couple folks here from graduate programs, which is fantastic. That's the luxury model of career development. A lot of firms aren't big enough to have a full graduate program and a full lifespan career planning model. And many graduate programs are becoming actually graduate programs light. So you can say, I'm in a graduate program, even though it might not be, a handheld, customized, career for you. So learning and growth happens a lot. This is the famous 70-20-10 model for those of you who read a lot about talent management. Turns out that 70% of your learning comes from your on-the-job, your regular on-the-job experiences. An additional 20% is social learning that comes through your network connections, through the people that you interact and talk with. Only 10% of employee learning and development happens in formal, structured training programs. Okay, so the implication here is it's not HR that owns employee learning and development. It's really managers. If the only people in your firm who are thinking about learning and development are HR people, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. Here's a little bit of data from the Australian Association of Graduate Recruiters, asking their people who are engaged in overseeing graduate programs, how critical are line managers to employee learning and development? 4 out of 5 say they're absolutely critical. And then 1 out of 5 says important. And nobody says they're not important. Okay? So it is essential that you have a partnership, that all of your line managers are committed to helping employees learn every single day, every single week on the job. Because most of that learning happens through what projects do you work on, what people are you connecting with in the firm, what opportunities do you have to showcase your talents and get feedback. So the managers are really critical here. The third thing is managers who are supportive. And this is really about connection. It is fostering a strong connection between employees and the firm, between employees and the purpose and the mission that the firm is trying to achieve, between the strengths of each employee and the firm. So as a manager, can you clearly articulate what your strategic objectives are and how those relate to the work of each employee? Each employee ideally needs to be able to say, here's what we're trying to achieve as a firm, and here's my part in it. And ideally, if you have that understanding, that means that you have the power to develop and craft your career in a way that you're going to have that sense of meaning. So this is something I recommend to everyone. This is something I also do. I try not to give advice that I don't take myself, although I did just confess to a number of you that I'm a work-life balance scholar, and I don't do a lot of that. I recommend it highly. I'm trying to do more of it, and this is a dirty little secret in the work-life balance research community, that we're actually a bunch of workaholics, but we know it's not good. Okay, we're trying to get better at it. But let me give you an example. So at EDHEC, our two-pronged strategic plan is to do research that is valuable to business. We have this EDHEC for Business and Research for Business credo. We want to make sure that the knowledge we are producing and disseminating is really valuable to practicing managers. And the other thing is we're globalizing. So we're trying to spread the word about our school, raise the visibility internationally. So my question, therefore, as I constantly craft my own career, is how do I link to that? How do I plug in what I love to do and what I'm good at in ways that create value for the institution? So working with Rose and other people in corporate relations, it turns out one thing I'm good at is speaking, and I love it. I'd actually rather be here in Singapore talking to you guys and hearing about what's happening in your firms than I would be sitting in a classroom of 20-year-old students asking them to stop talking while I'm explaining a concept. So, this is part of what I've done. I've said I'd like to make this part of my job. They said, we recognize you're good at this, let's do that. Another thing that I love to do is to blog. Okay, so I do academic research, but I also write for Harvard Business Review, and that is something I find really enriching and I really enjoy. And that, of course, is very globally visible outlet. So here are 2 steps that I've taken in my own job and made a case to my manager, the dean of the faculty, that I'd like to do this. I'd like to have this be a formal part of my job. It adds value. He agreed, and thus I'm here with you tonight. So being supportive as a manager is really about helping employees to connect what they care about most with what you're trying to achieve as a firm and open up the pathways for people to be able to do that. Number 4, being valued and recognized. Critically important, right? And sometimes when you start talking about these types of things, people who are particularly, quantitatively oriented, like we're engineers, we're finance people, like don't show us pictures of cats and deer. I'm going to show you a picture of a cat and deer because you know what? You're actually all humans, and this is really powerful stuff. Here's a little bit of data from a survey that was just completed by the American Psychological Association. What I want you guys to look at here is the difference between the bar that's in red, the central bar, and the bar that's in green. What I'm showing you here is 3 different survey items that are split out on the basis of the extent to which respondents feel valued by their firm or not. Okay? So respondents who say, who endorse the item, I am motivated to do the very best for my employer. People who feel valued 91% of those employees say, yes, I am motivated to do my very best for my employer. Among people who don't feel valued, only 37%, okay, only a little over a third are motivated to do their best. How about your employer brand? Employees who feel valued, 85% of them say, I would recommend my employer as a place to others, as a good place to work, versus 15% of employees who don't feel valued. Those people don't like working for you. And they wouldn't recommend you as a good employer to people that they know and respect. And then the direct retention question. For people who are valued, less than 1 in 5 intends to look for a new job in the next year. For those who don't feel valued, it's more than half. Okay, so this is really powerful stuff, whether or not you feel recognized and whether or not you feel valued. If you're not building that in, your employees are going to walk. All right, last thing, work-life fit and flexibility. We see this typically number 2 globally in surveys of what people are looking for when they choose employers. Number 1, learning and growth. Number 2, work-life fit. And this isn't just working mothers, okay? This is everybody. Everybody is a whole person. Everybody exists outside of the office. This sometimes comes as a shock to his students. Every now and then a student has seen me in Nice, even at a nightclub, and been like, oh my God, she exists outside the classroom. It's like, yep. And so does everybody else who works, right? We're whole people. Some of us like to run marathons, some of us like to garden, some of us have children, some of us have parents that we're taking care of, some of us are musicians, and all of these things bring us energy. Okay, so the whole self, we can't divide ourselves up and put ourselves into different boxes like who's the last person who did that? Voldemort, I think was his name, and that ended badly. So this is really about what work-life fit and flexibility. It's about being able to do well in all the domains that you care about, okay? Being able to perform well at work, being able to have meaningful relationships, being able to contribute to a cause, being able to be physically healthy and exercise. That's what work-life fit is about. It's way, way beyond having a place where moms can bring their kids so they can get to work. I just came from this work-life conference in New York, and one of the big topics is working fathers and how the image and the identity of fathers is changing. And we're finding, that among people coming out of college now, men are really very conflicted because they really want to be engaged in their families. The era of the man kind of saying, okay, I'm married, here's a child, it's yours, honey, I'll be at the office for the next 40 years. There really aren't very many men who want that life, and I don't blame them, because you miss out on a lot. So it's really about having the ability to do well at what you care about and invest yourself in the parts of your life that are meaningful to you. All right, I want to talk a little bit about Google's Project Oxygen, and this is a really interesting research project. Sometimes when you start talking about Google, people go, oh boy, here we go, we have to hear about Google again. Yes, Google has a lot of things that other firms don't have. The most important thing that Google has that makes it do really well as an employer is they have a very data analytic, systematic process of self-reflection and improvement. Okay, so everything that Google does, they study, they collect data, they analyze, they say, how do we use all the knowledge that we have about ourselves to get better and better and better? That's the hallmark of a successful firm. That's also the hallmark of a successful human being. Okay, if you're making the same mistakes this year that you did last year, you didn't learn from those mistakes. Okay, you could actually be better now. So the key thing I do in every single leadership development activity I do is I start with people trying to raise their self-awareness, trying to get them to reflect more. If you just reflect on your ongoing performance, you learn more. Okay, just a process of reflection, and Google does it systematically. So this Project Oxygen started off about 4 years ago now or so, I think, as a research project to answer the following question: do managers matter? Google is a firm full of engineers. They're very scientific people. They're highly skilled. Do highly skilled people actually even need a manager? Because they're so highly skilled, right? They can just they should just have, here's your resources, et cetera, and go. So the hypothesis that this project was working with was essentially, no, managers don't matter. They don't really make a difference in performance, and we're going to test that out. Well, so to the question, so long story short, do managers matter? The answer to that question is yes, they do. And what they found is that there are 8 key behaviors. Managers who score high on those behaviors do much better than other managers in terms of retaining their employees, in terms of their employees' performance and job satisfaction. And small incremental increases in these 8 competencies yield big gains in those employee outcomes. So Google has taken this knowledge and really codified it and poured it back into training and how they appraise performance and how they reward people. And so I'm going to show you what it is that Google's best managers do, and that it's not just search. You know, this applies to all companies. So the number one skill competency that they find is that the best managers are good coaches. Okay, this is what people want. What's it actually like to work at Google? Funny thing, you know, you think, oh, that would be the best. You've got all these, you know, you're skateboarding around the office, whatever. You can bring your dog. Everybody's a genius. You've got all this fantastic food. You know, they pick you up on an air-conditioned, Wi-Fi-enabled bus and drive you. And well, actually, what it's like to work there, it's pretty anxiety-producing because everybody around you is a genius. They don't have career paths. You don't know where you're going. And so there's actually this kind of intellectual malaise that affects a lot of people there because they're thinking, what's going to happen? Where am I going in this firm? So they really need people who are good coaches, who are helping their employees on an ongoing basis to clarify and articulate, this is what's really fueling me. This is what I want to pursue now. This is how I'd like to expand my skills. But it's not just places like Google where that's important. It's every firm. The second thing is empowering your team, not micromanaging. So a good manager is somebody who's taking away all the barriers and the friction that gets in the way. You know, how much of your time in your job do you spend and you say to yourself, this isn't what I should be focusing on? You know, I'm spending 4 hours this morning doing this kind of ugly administrative report. I could be actually adding value. Okay, so a good manager is taking away all of this stuff that gets in the way of high velocity performance, essentially. The third thing is expresses interest in and concern for team members' success and personal well-being. Engineers don't always take to this naturally. They don't always realize, I need to connect. You know, I need to say, hey, how was your weekend? You look like you got some color. Were you outside or whatever? But guess what? Even engineers need the sunshine of human connection to shine on them to really to perform at their peak. So this turns out to be quite important. It's very sustaining. Good managers are productive and results-oriented. Again, they're making sure that their employees can really perform. They're giving clarity in terms of the expectations. What are we trying to achieve? How do we move forward? How can I help you? What resources do we need? And really paving the way. Number 5 is a good communicator, listens and shares information. You know, in an organization where there's rumblings about there's something bad is going to happen, or we don't know what's happening at the top, or, you know, we've heard some rumors, all that cognitive energy gets pulled away from the actual work, and people focus on, okay, I need to protect myself, what's going to happen, who's got power, who can I align myself with? It's a real drag on performance. So a good manager is opening up the pathways of communication, going both up and down. They're listening, they're finding out what their employees are concerned about, they're conveying that to people who can do something about it, and they're sharing what they know. There are no silos. Or good managers really fight against silos. Number 6, helping with career development. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about this because, again, this really comes down to helping people connect their interests with opportunities to grow in those regards. Has a clear vision and strategy for the team. Is helping to really point people in a meaningful direction, and this does increase that sense of meaningfulness at work. And number 6, has key technical skills that help him or her advise the team. So that ends up being the bottom of the important competencies, even though that's the thing that people mostly get promoted on. It's not unimportant. Obviously, you need to know what your team is doing and be able to do that work so people respect you and you have legitimacy and you understand their work. But that is down at the bottom of the most important things. Okay, so I'm going to focus on 4 of these things because we don't have, otherwise we'll be here all night. Number 1, the coaching. Number 2, empowering and avoiding micromanagement. Number 3, expressing interest and concern for team members' well-being and helping with career development. I'm going to show you exactly what this looks like. And here is some quotes and some ways to measure this. So this is what, an example of what a Google employee said. For a manager, what does it look like when somebody is a good coach? Well, for example, it means she caters to your skill set and personality with her guidance and her feedback. She pushes you to grow while still making you feel strongly supported. If you want managers to do something, the best way is to actually measure that. Is the competency that you want? If you want people to retain employees, are you actually measuring what they do on retention? Is that linked into their reward system? How do you actually measure how well they're doing? So this is how Google measures what it means to be a good coach. They actually ask in their 360s that are done. There's the Google Geist twice a year survey, and then the 360s. My manager gives me actionable feedback that helps me improve my performance. Key part of growing, right? My manager helps me understand how my performance is evaluated. My manager regularly gives me positive feedback for things I did well, and my manager is quick to grant credit to team members for their work. Okay, so these are tangible behaviors that you can see to what extent do employees agree with these indicators. Second thing, empowering the team and avoiding micromanagement. Okay, nobody likes to be micromanaged. Ideally, a manager who has this competency, the employee might say, I like the trust my manager gives me and my team in managing and are doing our work as we see fit. Clarity of expectations, autonomy in methods of work. Okay, there is no micromanaging. We know that she is there to answer our questions and guide us if need be. Okay, so the manager is facilitator. And this is how Google actually measures this competency on their 360s. My manager does not micromanage, meaning get involved in details that should be handled at other levels. And my manager helps me to navigate barriers and roadblocks, things like insufficient resources or conflicting priorities, those of us who are in matrix organizations that prevent me from working effectively. So again, it's about moving people forward, facilitating performance, removing barriers, helping to put conditions in place that let people really perform well. Third thing, expressing interest and concern for team members' success and personal well-being. And here's what one employee said. My manager is incredibly authentic, credible, and caring, manages to do a brilliant job in ensuring our team members achieve their goals while also ensuring that everyone on the team personally feels as if they're valuable. Okay, so that sense of being valued. Very simple question that they ask. Does your manager show consideration for you as a person? And the last thing is the help with career development. So a good manager might do, as one Google employee quoted, helps me to see that career development isn't only about being promoted. It's also about growing, acquiring, and sharing expertise. I had an executive MBA student last year who was completely derailed by the fact that he had gotten a new manager, and this new manager had not put him down, had not nominated him for the high potential program. And that was the only thing that this employee could see, that he didn't have this kind of seal of approval that you're in this program, and that was like the only concept of career growth that this particular employee had, until we really had to have some conversations about what are the other ways in which you can assess your own career success and have a sense that you're moving forward. I was so, seeing that this is a very tangible problem for a lot of employees, then I wrote a blog that came out in Harvard Business Review about the many different ways in which you can assess your own career success. You have to think flexibly in this world that we're in that's pretty, ambiguous and dynamic. And here's the measure for that. My manager has had a meaningful discussion with me about my career development in the past 6 months. If you're only doing career conversations at the annual performance review? Well, first of all, everybody hates performance reviews. Okay, even HR. And in fact, you know what? I've taught strategic HR for 10 years, and I basically have finally come to the conclusion performance appraisal, as traditionally implemented, is useless. We shouldn't even do it. Okay, because the main purpose it serves is to make sure we're covering our bases in case we need to fire somebody, or who's going to get a 3% increase versus who's going to get a 4.5% increase. Guess what? That 1.5%, that doesn't motivate anybody. Okay, it's just okay, I got the high level, I got a 4 on my rating versus 2, so therefore I'm good. The best thing to do is have ongoing conversations about career development. What do you want to learn this month? How can I support you in that? What did you take away from that last project? What do you know now that you didn't know before? How can we spread that knowledge to the other people on our team? It doesn't take a whole lot of effort. It doesn't take a huge program supported by HR. It takes an awareness that this is a key to motivating and developing your employees. Having this kind of awareness and communication about how are you learning and how can I help you learn more. And my manager helps me to identify opportunities, projects, relationships, learning programs to help develop my skills and career. Again, keep in mind 90% of employee learning is happening on the job and through relationships. Okay, so it's the managers who need to facilitate that. Okay, couple tips, and then we're going to do an interactive exercise. How to be a good coach. This was the #1 competency. Find out what matters to each of your team members. For so many people, you might be in an organization and you perform well, you've been there for a long time, everybody knows you're good at what you do, but maybe it's gotten a little stale. Okay? Maybe there's a new way you'd like to grow. Maybe you see other areas of your firm and you think, I bet I could really, that's really interesting to me. I'd love to move over there, but how can I do that when that's not what I do? This is the existential struggle of the executive MBA student. I'm 37 years old. I've done great at audit. I want to do something. I'm sick of it. It doesn't fuel me. But how can I possibly switch when I'm so far into this field? And this is what people know I do. I can't switch at my level. So coaching is a way to help people craft so that their situation is really well aligned and they're adding the most value they can. Okay, it's not about saying to everybody, what do you want to do? Do anything you want. It's saying, how do we find a way for you to really be adding value to the firm that's going to connect with your own goals? So ask them what they want to work on for their development. Is there any training you need to be better? What can I do to help you? Is there anybody I can introduce you to? Who in the firm has some knowledge that you might benefit from? Let's connect you. Ask them what kind of coaching and feedback they would like from you. Ever think of asking one of your team members, how can I best communicate with you? What would it be helpful? What information would be helpful for you to have from me? People have different preferences. Some people want constant feedback. Some people are like, don't talk to me unless there's a problem. So just basically asking the question, how can I best support you, is pretty powerful. #2, agree on development priorities. So you need to communicate your expectations for your team members' development. Okay, we're going into a new market, we're opening up a new line of business, and everybody needs to understand what our clients in that industry, what kind of challenges they're facing, so that we can really be providing good solutions, we can understand their challenges and respond as effectively as possible, perhaps. Give concrete guidance on what each team member can do to perform at the next level. Okay, if you want to move up or you want to move into a different area, what exactly do you need to be able to do well to get there? And how can you get exposure to that in your job? Third thing, check in with your team members regularly. Quick one-to-one meetings. Okay, it could be 5 to 10 minutes, one morning a week, just checking in with people to see how well things are going. Is there anything you need from me? Any challenges you're facing that might be holding you back? Excellent, here's what I can do for you. You can do even something like have a shared document a shared Google Doc or something where either the manager or the employee can just put down, here's an item that I'd like to talk with you about at our next one-on-one, staying in touch. Okay, so people are aware of what's on each other's radar screen. A lot of times, all of this stuff, we're thinking, oh, I wish my manager knew this. Or, you know, why doesn't my employee, why don't they get it? This is what I want them to do. Have you told them clearly? Do they understand? Provide positive feedback and encouragement when you see team members making an effort to improve. A lot of times we don't bother to do that. It's so easy, but it's so often overlooked. Okay, a little tiny bit of positive feedback really goes a long way in terms of helping people to feel valued and affirmed and to even understand their own competence, right? A lot of people go around feeling like imposters. They're thinking, oh man, I'm doing this, I'm trying as hard as I can, but I don't even know if I'm good at it. A little bit of feedback coming from above saying, you really nailed it there. You know, that presentation was fantastic. You had the people from the outset. I noticed there was a little drop in your energy about halfway through when you got this question, you struggled. Here's a way that maybe you could have answered it better. That's so valuable to that person to hear that. Otherwise we go around guessing, I think I'm doing okay, but I'm really not sure. So this is powerful. Okay, so now what we're going to do is a coaching exercise, okay, since we've talked all about coaching. In order to launch this, Rose and I are going to do a coaching demonstration. And what we're going to do, very simply, is what we're going to ask you to then do, which is to role model a basic developmental conversation between a manager and an employee, putting these things into practice. Okay, how can I'm going to be the manager, even though Rose is dressed much more nicely than me, because we're a modern firm and we're not real hierarchical. So I'm just going to talk with Rose and see, what's she interested, what's happening with her, how can I help her learn more, and then we're going to have you guys pair off and practice the same thing. You're each going to have a chance to be the coach and to be the person being coached and to give each other feedback. Okay, and that's and then we'll have a little discussion. That's our program for the rest of the time. So, okay, so here we go. Rose, thank you so much for coming in and sitting down with me this morning. I know you have a really gnarly project going on right now.
So busy.
I just want to make sure I'm checking in with you on a regular basis to see how things are going and how I can support you in meeting your own goals. We got to make time for this, right?
Yeah. Things are going pretty well. I'm really stressed right now. There's so many projects on the go.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about what your challenges are right now and what your goals are.
Well, I mean, we spoke about our objectives at the begining of the year, so you know what my objectives are for this year.
Yeah.
And I'm really working hard. The market's difficult, but but in addition to that, there's some, I've been doing this for 10 years, and there's some other things that are really interesting me right now, and I see that we're doing some of those projects in other areas, and I'd like to get involved with them, but I just don't have any bandwidth right now.
Oh, okay, so tell me a little bit about what's drawing your interest. What would you ideally like to get involved in?
Well, we have our leadership consulting activity, and I'm really interested in. I just took my certified executive coaching certification, and I don't have any experience in some of the projects they're doing around succession planning and onboarding coaching, but I'd really like to get involved in some of the projects they're doing, and I really don't know how I can do that.
Okay, well, I understand the demands you're facing, but on the other hand, the broader your expertise, the more valuable you are to us as a firm. So let's think a little bit about what steps you might take to increase your exposure to that area of practice and maybe get involved. Can you think of any people you might talk to, for example, to learn more about it?
Well, obviously Joe runs the practice, right? And he works really closely with Graham, but I don't really know either one of them very well. And obviously I've spoken to them, but I don't know maybe the best way to approach them about this.
Okay, well, what do you have from what you've been doing over the past 10 years that connects? What kind of skills and interests do you have that might present a common point for your discussion?
Well, it's really, I've been doing a lot of research around the issues. Okay,
fantastic.
Obviously, I've been attending a lot of seminars, and like I said, I just got certified. So it's really more theoretical, and obviously what I do today doesn't doesn't directly tie into what I'd like to do. So I've looked into some courses that I can take to continue, but I think that we have some projects in-house that I could get involved in, and it's really finding the bandwidth to be able to do that. I am so busy right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what would help you to carve out the time? How much time? Do you have a sense of how much time you need to devote some time to developing this?
I'd need a day a week minimum.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I just can't see how I could do that right now.
Right. Well, I'd be happy. I have sat in on the executive committee meeting where we've talked a little bit about the succession planning part of the business. So I'd be happy if you'd like just to provide you with an introduction to Joe to come over and talk a little bit about the ideas that you do have, if that would be helpful to you.
Yeah, that would be great if you could facilitate that.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely. That would be my pleasure. And maybe we could pull in some of the people who are interested in expanding into your area. I think we could probably find the resources to get you a day, so long as we can articulate exactly what your activity and goals are going to be for that. Do you think you could maybe draw up something, a page just explaining exactly what it is your proposed activities are?
Yeah, I think I need to have a couple conversations first to see maybe how I could get involved, and then I could
Okay.
definitely do that, and maybe in addition to that, put together my idea of some of the courses outside of work that I'd like to take, and
Excellent.
potentially get some sponsorship.
Fantastic. Yeah, if you could include maybe some cost estimates, the program information, I can go ahead and take that and see if I can't get that approved for you. I think that would give you a good leg up.
Okay.
Okay,
Well,
so-
let me work on that, and like I said, I have a million meetings today, so let me get back to you. I guess we'll talk again next week.
I'd be happy to.
Right?
That would be great. And please don't hesitate if there is anything else that you think of. Share your ideas with me, and I'll look forward to talking with you next week.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's really exciting. I appreciate
Excellent.
that. Yeah.
Excellent. Keep it. We really want to hold on to you. So we're going to do whatever we can to make that happen.
Thank you. I feel so. I feel like I have a
Great, okay. Okay, great. So that's a little example of how that conversation might go. And the first thing I want to talk is about listening. So the key thing in coaching is really listening. Okay, so everybody, when you are at what we call level 1 listening, this is what it feels like. I want everybody to actually do this motion. Okay, this is like when you've got a lot of thoughts in your head. You're in a conversation with somebody, but you got all this stuff stirring around. You're thinking, what's behind that question? What am I going to say next? How am I going to phrase this, etc.? I want you now to turn to the person you're going to be coaching, and I want you to go like this. This is level 2. Go ahead and do it physically. It's a powerful thing. Okay, so when you are like this, you're fully concentrating, you're fully engaged in what that person is saying. You're not planning your answer. Trust yourself. Okay, it's like a dance. The next question, the next piece is going to come. So that is what level 2 listening is. And when you can do that with somebody, you know what it's like when you're talking with somebody and you feel like they're not really there with you? Like you're trying to get something across and you can tell their mind is somewhere else? Versus what it's like when you can tell that you're really connecting with somebody and you have their full attention. It's a very different experience. And that's the context you want to create as a person who's doing the coaching. So just think in the future, think about what it feels like to do this versus what it feels like to do that. And just keep that in mind when you have conversations with people. The next thing is to try to design an alliance. You open up a coaching conversation and you want to take a moment to say, this is what our purpose is. Okay, so when I sat and talked with Rose, I said right at the outset, tell me about what your challenges are, tell me about what your goals are, because I'm here to help support you in that. Okay, so it's clear to the person, I'm not here to say, hey, you were supposed to have a document on my desk this morning, where is it? And oh, by the way, can I do anything for you? You're really setting the context, okay, that this is a conversation for me to understand how I can help you. Third thing, ask, don't tell. Okay, so I was doing a lot of questioning when I was talking to Rose, and then I was summarizing a little bit and feeding back what I could do to help her. Managers especially, you had a great career, you're skilled, you're powerful, etc. We tend to get in that constant, and I'm a professor, so I do this too, like my husband will tell you, this kind of like, let me tell you everything I know. But you're here to find out what the person needs. So the questions are more important, and that's why you can listen, and you don't need to plan your response because you're going to be driven by the questions, okay? You're going to respond spontaneously. Focus on moving forward positively. A lot of times people get caught in this thing. You say, you know, Rose mentioned a couple times, oh, she's stressed, she's way down, she has, you know, she doesn't have the time. I didn't really engage with her extensively on that. I proposed a solution, but I didn't say, well, come on, Rose, you should be able to handle this. You've been with the firm for 10 years. Why are you getting all caught up in this? What's wrong? Are you stressed? I mean, how stressed are you? You know, we were focusing on how do we move forward positively. Basic distinction, and build some accountability. Okay, so Rose and I talked about what is she going to do, and she made a plan. Okay, she's going to talk, she's going to investigate these training programs. She's going to put down on a piece of paper exactly what her proposed activity would be like. She's going to get back to me. We're going to talk in a week. So we have that agreement. Okay, so those are some basic things to keep in mind. Okay, so here's the exercise. One of you is a manager and one of you is an employee, quite simply. You can choose who wants to be the coach first. And we're going to do this 2 times. As you can see, as we've just experienced, pretty energizing to engage in these conversations, right? So was this difficult, or did you take to it? I mean, let me know how did it feel to do this kind of coaching with somebody? Yeah, and that's really paying attention to the whole person. I mean, that's a way to really to convey that you are concerned about the personal success and well-being of your employees. A lot of times we think that we can operate like computers, and many of us push ourselves to dangerous places where we're actually really compromising our health. So that's a great thing. Other questions that you observed to be pretty powerful, or things that were helpful, you know, in terms of finding out what matters to employees? Right, so maybe if you talk, you know, it's wonderful if you have people in your company who can do this, to really use them as role models, to maybe have them talk a little bit about, you know, how do you have these kind of conversations? Because it's a different kind of conversation, right? It might be the kind of conversation that you don't have on a regular basis in the workplace. But so long as you understand, you know, what are some of the principles, it's really not that difficult, right? And it really can help to move you to a new, very productive place of communication. Yeah, and that's, you know, that's a real, so one of the key things for the manager is to convey that this is something that you are really committed to. You know, that you're not going to listen to the employee and then use what they've said against them. So building trust is really critical. One of the things that Rose mentioned at the outset is the importance of confidentiality, but also another way that you build trust is by actually following up and responding. So when an employee says, you know, I could perform better if you could help me in this way, then actually following through and doing that. And that makes the next conversation even more productive, because the employee now has the experience, oh, this was actually productive. You know, my boss didn't turn around and tell me that, you know, they have no confidence in me. They actually helped me and they listened to me. So this is one of the reasons why the ongoing conversations are really critical, because you can build up, you know, an effective open sharing and response that really becomes quite productive in terms of helping employees to perform. How about what would you need in order to have these kind of conversations happening more frequently and systematically in your company? It's really suspending, you know, like you were saying, suspending your judgment and saying my intention. So you go to somebody with the intention of, I want to understand this person, and I want to do what I can to help them. And so that might mean, if you're a results-focused manager, it might mean I'm stepping out of that right now. And now I'm really stepping into, I'm a facilitator, and I want to connect my employees. I want to energize this employee. I want to get the most, you know, if you want to be a real results-oriented manager, I want to get the most out of my employees. You know, I have challenges, I have struggles, my own demands that I need to meet. Well, guess what? This is a way that you can this is really a way that you can save yourself time. Okay, this didn't take a whole lot of time, yet it sounds as though you experienced it as quite productive. And a lot of times managers waste an awful lot of their own time and energy, dealing with work that doesn't quite meet their expectations, or dealing with frustrations of trying to move their team forward. Some of that time could very productively be directed into these kinds of conversations, and that way you're actually you're opening up the opportunity for your employees to perform better, and you're getting rid yourself of some of those frustrations of dealing with employees who aren't performing at their peak. So it's an investment, and it feels an awful lot better to have this kind of a conversation as a manager than it feels to have a conversation that says, we didn't do as well on this project as we should have. I'm really disappointed. That doesn't feel good for the employee, and the manager goes away maybe feeling, well, at least I got that off my mind. But it's a different feeling than saying, wow, I just realized something about my employee, and that person is super motivated right now. Okay, so there's a lot to be gained here in terms of motivation. Any other, we're kind of at the end of our time, but any other reactions to this, thoughts, how you can do more of this? There's a lot of knowledge that's coming out about this now. I mean, I mentioned the work, for example, of Teresa Amabile, who published a book 2 years ago called The Progress Principle. It's a book that I'm really very, I recommend a lot. Daniel Goleman is a person who's done a lot of work on this, on emotional intelligence. He's got a new book out called Focus. I recommend that you read the Harvard Business Review blogs. You can easily, not just mine, but everybody's. I'll just, put some of my own contact information up here. You can click any of these links and get a lot, because this is what I tend to focus on in my own writing and communication. I'm very, very active on social media, so feel free to connect with me on any of these accounts, to contact me. I'm happy to work more intensively with anybody who would like to have some kind of a workshop or something like that in their firm. So don't hesitate to contact me if that's the case, and definitely come to our meeting next year and bring your manager.